This is a clip from an earlier live stream. I know you're going to like it, so the link to the full video is down below. Check it out. I'll see you over there.
Tyler Robinson is not just alleged to be the killer. He is the killer.
Right.
His guilt is plain as day. And I will explain why in a moment. Now, during his appearance, Robinson repeatedly grinned and smiled as if he was enjoying himself. This is a man who has clearly benefited from the many fanciful stories that have been told about Charlie's death. His expression is the demonic grin of a sociopath. It's a grin that we've seen from many other sociopaths over the years, from Luigi Mangione to Brian Koberger. It's familiar. And therefore, the images from the courtroom yesterday are not confounding or shocking. They're sobering. And they aren't particularly difficult to decode. Now, at the risk of understatement, this does not look like footage of a man who's being framed for murder or somebody who's terrified and confused. He looks a lot like many other narcissistic, sociopathic murderers who've been in the exact same position. You know, there's been a lot of conversation about vibes and feelings, people claiming that various figures involved in this saga give off bad vibes or give them a weird feeling. Needless to say, vibes and feelings do not constitute evidence of anything. But it's worth asking anyway. What kind of vibe does Tyler Robinson give off? Can anyone honestly say you get the vibe that this is an innocent man being railroaded by powerful forces involved in a global conspiracy? To say nothing of his parents, who certainly are not giving off the vibes of parents who know that their son is being used as a patsy for a crime he didn't commit. This footage should have the effect of focusing your mind and strengthening your resolve after 3 months of speculation and paranoia. It should also motivate you to evaluate, with as much precision and seriousness as possible, the strength of the case against Tyler Robinson. Justice in this case depends on it, and so does perhaps the survival of the conservative political movement, and therefore our country. So the time for wild theorizing is over. Now, of course, as we all know, Candace Owens has been by far the most prominent person to push alternative theories of the case. Candace has been my friend for many years now, but I strongly disagree with her theories about this case, and I've told her that in our private conversations. I won't and would never say anything about the content of those conversations, except that we've had them. But many millions of other people in the general public have come to believe these theories, and there are plenty of other people online who are pushing them, which means that there's a conversation to be had with the general public as well, which is what I want to do today. If you're in that camp, if you're someone who believes that Charlie's death was the result of some kind of vast conspiracy implicating foreign governments, our own government, TPUSA, I ask you to listen to what I have to say. I'm not going to insult or condemn you. I'm just going to tell you plainly that I think you're wrong and why. Guilt is established through evidence, and the evidence, all of the evidence, points in one direction, which isn't to say that there aren't unanswered questions, and it's not even to dismiss the possibility of a conspiracy. There may indeed be a conspiracy of sorts, but it's a conspiracy, if there is one, among left-wing militants in Utah. I'll get to all of that. I just ask that you listen. And we'll start with the evidence, and here it is. DNA recovered at the crime scene from a screwdriver, as well as a towel that was wrapped around the rifle used in the shooting, both match Tyler Robinson. His DNA was also found on the trigger of the rifle. This is evidence that mathematically excludes any other suspect. It's also evidence that is subject to independent testing by the defense team and which the state crime lab has reviewed separately from the FBI. It's evidence that, even if it were the only evidence, would likely be enough to convict anyone in any court. But it's not the only evidence. Now, additionally, in a text message after the shooting, Robinson said that he wanted to take out Charlie Kirk because he's been spreading hate. He also wrote a note saying, "I have the opportunity to take out Charlie Kirk, and I'm going to take it." The FBI has a photograph of that note. Now, hearing all this, you might say, well, I don't trust the FBI. Maybe they faked the text messages. Maybe they planted the DNA. And it's certainly not unreasonable to distrust the FBI, generally speaking. After all, we've been lied to so many times about virtually everything, from Russiagate to COVID to George Floyd to the assassination attempt in Butler, and so on. The FBI, as an institution, historically, has very little credibility. But here's the thing. The case does not hinge on the credibility of the FBI, not even close. Tyler Robinson's father and mother both recognized their son in the surveillance images from UVU's cameras. Robinson's father also recognized the rifle as the same type of rifle that had been given to his son as a gift. But Robinson didn't provide a photo of the rifle when his father requested one after the shooting. He didn't tell his parents where the rifle was. He also didn't deny committing the crime when his parents asked about it. Nor did Robinson say that the FBI had faked the surveillance images somehow as a way of setting him up as a patsy. And even if you respond to that by saying, well, none of that is true, his parents didn't actually recognize him or turn him in. Well, if that were the case, then the parents who are alive today, you would think would be out in front of cameras every single day, shouting to the heavens that their son is innocent. And they are not doing that. Now, instead, when Tyler was asked why he had killed Charlie, he wondered aloud about whether he should kill himself and stated that Charlie was responsible for spreading evil. And then before going to the sheriff's office, Robinson also posted this message to a group of his friends on Discord, quote, "It was me at UVU yesterday. I'm sorry for all of this." So we have 3 confessions here, one to his parents, one to his roommate, and one on Discord. And the confessions were not obtained by the FBI or coerced in an interrogation room or anything like that. Robinson turned himself in at a sheriff's office, not an FBI field office. A retired deputy sheriff and family friend brought him there. Those local sheriffs were the ones who took the first statements from Robinson's parents, which identified Robinson as the shooter and provided the motive. In literally any other case, for literally any other defendant, if there is DNA evidence and a confession, they will be convicted. And to say that this kind of evidence is not enough, indeed to say that this evidence doesn't even point vaguely to the suspect, is to essentially say that guilt can never be proven in a court of law. And by the way, a police officer at Utah Valley University was the first person to identify where the shooter was located. The FBI was not on the scene at the time. This officer immediately identified where the shot had come from, and he ran to the sniper's nest. According to charging documents, which were prepared by Utah's county attorney, quote, "At the moment of the shot, a UVU police officer was watching the crowd from an elevated vantage point. As soon as he heard the shot, he began to scan the area for threats. Believing the shot came from a rifle because of its sound, he looked for potential sniper positions. He noted a roof area approximately 160 yards away from Mr. Kirk as a potential shooting position and rushed there to look for evidence. When the UVU officer arrived at the position, he, quote, noticed markings in the gravel rooftop consistent with a sniper having lain on the roof, impressions in the gravel potentially left by the elbows, knees, and feet of a person in a prone shooting position. Police reviewed surveillance from the camera covering the roof and discovered that it recorded an individual dressed in dark clothing crossing the railing from the public walkway and drop onto the roof at approximately 12:15 p.m. After a short time, which
I just think is very interesting. Matt is doing nothing more than reading the charging documents and just being honest with the charging documents. And I'm just wondering, why did Candace not do this? Why does Candace not, again, all he's doing is just reading the charging docs. Why not talk about this instead of this fantastical, planes, trains, and automobiles story that she's telling? Why not just read the charging docs?
matches the known time of the shot. The individual arose and ran across the roof to the northeast. This discovery led to an intensive review of UVU surveillance recordings to attempt to track and identify the suspect. Now, notably, this UVU police officer, an unlikely participant in a grand FBI conspiracy by any measure, did not think a mysterious second shooter on a grassy knoll had taken the shot. He zeroed in on the shooting location right away. They checked the cameras, and the cameras provided images of the shooter climbing the steps, who was then identified by his parents. There's also the fact that, according to a former coworker, Robinson always walked around with his fists clenched. Now, this is not the kind of evidence that would convict Robinson on its own, obviously. It's circumstantial. It's not hard evidence. But we have hard evidence. And we have circumstantial evidence. So both the hard evidence and the circumstantial evidence point in one direction. This is from the New York Post, quoting an electrician that Tyler Robinson worked with. Quote, Tyler walked around with clenched fists all the time, like super hard clenched fists. I remember making a joke to him one time when he had his fists like that. I was like, are you angry, Tyler? And he was like, that's just what I do. He was always soft-spoken, but his fists were always like that. He said, even in the security footage from UVU, you can see he's got his fists clenched tight. And here is that security footage. So that detail from an independent witness is obviously incriminating. So is the fact that after the shooting, Robinson didn't answer his phone or show up to work. Quote, I was shocked when I heard the news yesterday. I was like, it can't be that Tyler. So I called my old coworker at Wild Electric and I was like, hey, did Tyler show up to work today? He was like, no, he was supposed to, but maybe he's at a different site. And I was like, dude, I think Tyler was the one who did the shooting. And he didn't believe me. The man said, adding to his that his subsequent phone call to Robinson went straight to voicemail. Now, in no uncertain terms, the evidence against Tyler Robinson, which comes from multiple independent sources, which is both hard evidence and circumstantial evidence, is overwhelming. I mean, it's easily enough for a reasonable jury to convict him 10 times over. By contrast, the alleged evidence implicating the U.S. military, foreign assassins with their personal cell phones, Egyptian Air Force planes, Turning Point USA, the French Foreign Legion, that evidence, actual evidence, is non-existent. It's not that there aren't any weird details about that day or about some of the people tangentially connected to the event, which you could point to, but there are two important points about those weird details. First of all, a lot of those details are based on hearsay and anonymous reports. So you have no way to know if they're even true. But second, even if they're all true, even if it's true, even if it's all true, even if it's true that Egyptian planes have been following Erica Kirk around and everything else, they do not constitute any kind of evidence at all. You could take any murder that has ever happened in the history of the world, look at all of the stuff surrounding it, and all of the people connected in some way to it, and point to any number of weird things. But there's a reason why no competent defense attorney would ever try to get his client off the hook simply on the basis that weird stuff happened on the same day that the murder happened. That is not exculpatory. That is not evidence of anything except that weird things happen.
Weird things happen.
And in that very important respect, the conspiracy theory claims are the exact opposite of the witness testimony and DNA evidence that will be presented at Robinson's trial, all of which will be subjected to cross-examination and independent testing. None of the weird details presented by conspiracy theorists, on the other hand, constitute evidence even remotely. And more to the point, the conspiracy theories make less sense of these facts than the so-called quote-unquote official narrative does. So the conspiracy theorists are positing random circumstantial points as evidence of a theory that itself does a worse job of explaining the points than the theory they're trying to debunk. All of the weird details, again, assuming they're all true, which we can't assume, actually make the conspiracy theory less plausible, not more. If this whole thing was the work of powerful actors at the highest levels of government across the world who plotted, planned, and carried it out, it would be much cleaner. And there would be far fewer weird details for people on the internet to home in on. For example, the conspiracy theories suggest that various powerful governmental forces across the globe conspired to kill Charlie Kirk. And rather than just having him die mysteriously in his home of a heart attack or suicide, which they could have easily arranged, or sniping him while he checked the mail one day and making sure the assassin was never found, which they also could have arranged, they decided to carry out this plot on stage, on camera, using Robinson as a patsy, who they allowed to be captured alive for some inexplicable reason, when they could have just made it a murder-suicide and tied up the loose ends. And on top of all that, we're told that they used the wrong ammunition in the official story. We'll get to that in a second. Along with leaving a trail of various other breadcrumbs that the internet could follow. And on top of that, they somehow convinced Robinson's own parents to go along with this charade, persuading them to offer their innocent son up to be executed, or at least to tolerate him being offered up, while also allowing them to stay alive to tell their tale if they ever choose to.
Well, I mean, when you say it like that, Matt, I mean, that sounds preposterous. Well, I mean, when you say it that way, of course, that sounds ludicrous.
You know, there have been many mass shootings where the shooter kills his family members before turning his gun on the public and then himself. That's an established pattern with these kinds of things. The hypothetical conspirators could have, and obviously would have, arranged all of that in this case, tidily closing the loop and getting rid of anyone who could blow the whistle. Indeed, the whole reason why everybody, I think, rightly assumes that Epstein didn't kill himself is that we know that powerful conspirators aren't just going to leave somebody alive to blow the lid on the whole thing. Now, admittedly, I'm speaking hypothetically about what these government assassins would do, but the conspiracy theorists are also speaking hypothetically, and I'm saying that the facts on the ground don't match their hypothetical at all. A theory is not just an educated guess. A theory, in a scientific sense, is a system meant to explain the facts we observe. We observe objects falling to the ground when we drop them. Gravity is the theory, the system that explains that fact. This is why we say theories should be predictive. They should have predictive power. A theory should predict what we observe in reality. So if you listen to somebody explain the theory of gravity, you would predict based on that theory that things would fall to the ground when you drop them. And what do you know? They do. But the conspiracy theory surrounding Charlie's assassination does not make sense of or predict any of the details that it was designed to explain. If you didn't know anything about Charlie or his murder and somebody told you the conspiracy theory, they told you the tale of militaries, intelligence agencies, multi-million-dollar organizations conspiring to kill this man in a highly coordinated, well-funded scheme carried out by specialized and highly trained killers, you would have in your head a picture of this case that would not even slightly resemble the reality. And when you finally read up on the case itself and the actual real-life details, you would be utterly shocked to see the clumsiness, the weirdness, the apparent inconsistencies, and most especially, you would be shocked that all of the people who are being used as patsies in this murder are somehow left alive. You would be shocked that Charlie's murder very much resembles, in every way, the work of an untrained radical whack job and not the work of nefarious global elites. Now, you could argue that nefarious global elites would want it to look like the work of an untrained radical whack job. But the whole reason you formulated this theory is because you say it doesn't look like the work of an untrained radical whack job, even though it does. So your theory collapses in on itself. It eats its own tail. And on that point, we need to talk about one specific insinuation which comes up quite often and which the conspiracy theorists are hanging much of their theory on, which is that Robinson's rifle may not have killed Charlie Kirk because a bullet from that rifle would have decapitated him. Now, this is an insinuation that claims to rely on actual scientific evidence, so it's worth discussing in some detail. Again, even if it's true that the ammunition doesn't match the type of injury Charlie sustained, that inconsistency makes even less sense under the theory that this was all plotted by militaries and governments. Right. Would they not have known this fact about the ammunition?
Good catch.
Is it even plausible that they would make that kind of mistake? But we're supposed to believe this claim about the rifle because of the demonstrations like this one, which Candace presented on her show recently. Watch.
Well, we definitely penetrated our water jugs, and I don't think this is going to help to stop the conspiracy theories. His head fell off.
Look at that. I mean, watch that.
All right, guys, I figured this is probably what would happen. I was trying to remain optimistic, but that right there is why people are skeptical on the official story. The 30-06 is a very hard round to stop.
Yeah, so I wanted to show that because I realized there's a bunch of people who may not be gun enthusiasts. Obviously, that channel is dedicated to it. And just so you understand and really appreciate what the federal government is trying to sell to you right now. That's what we mean when we say that particular bullet would have decapitated Charlie. Like you see, like actually, it just the idea that that just like ricocheted and went inward is just so beyond ridiculous. It's insulting.
One of the many obvious problems here is that this demonstration does not account for any of the actual variables of the assassination beyond the round that was used.
Right.
And the most important missing variable is that the actual shooter was at an elevated position, roughly 40 feet above the ground. He shot Charlie at an angle, and they don't account for that in any way in this demonstration. Take a look at this diagram that was uploaded by Phoenix Ammunition, which is a credible source on the topic because they manufacture precision ammo. And the blue line is the bullet trajectory that they assess as plausible. It gives you an idea of how the bullet may have deflected once it hits Charlie's spine. And if you've ever gone hunting, you know how often this kind of thing happens. A powerful round, particularly if it's shot at an angle, will often deflect off bone, sending fragments downward into the body. But if you watch that demonstration, which doesn't remotely mirror the actual conditions of the shooting, you're led to believe that this is physically impossible. You're told that it's far more likely that a second unknown shooter actually shot Charlie with a completely different weapon, which for the third time, if the conspiracy theories are true, it wouldn't make any sense for the conspirators to carry out the assassination that way.
All right, Greenheart's in the chat, y'all can hear.
So I'd love to know where things stand with that piece of the investigation. But because I am a sane person who understands the law, I also know that the FBI, does not run around updating its investigation and releasing the very latest on what they found. And people who are demanding that the FBI or DOJ do so do not know anything about law enforcement.
Say her name.
Some of us have been covering in depth legal cases and matters and have even tried cases and matters for years.
Say her
That
name.
is how I have spent the past 30 years of my life. Plus, trying cases involved in the legal system as a trial attorney, then a Supreme Court correspondent covering cases, civil and criminal, then as a legal correspondent for Fox News, legal commentator for Fox News, and ever thereafter. And let me tell you something. The FBI does not run around updating its information after somebody gets indicted. It doesn't. It would be extraordinary if it were to do so. And the DOJ is extremely tight-lipped, normally, on its criminal cases. When it's not, it's behaving inappropriately. When it's not, you have rogue prosecutors who wasn't with the DOJ, Tish James, but like her, the Attorney General of New York, running around trying to update her case against Donald Trump, or Fannie Willis shooting her mouth off about Donald Trump. What did we do when those prosecutors did that? We ripped them a new one because it's inappropriate. Stop requesting or requiring the FBI or the DOJ to update its evidence for you.
Okay, look, let me tell you something. I'm getting my passport. I'm ready to become Team Megyn again. I'm ready to, come back to Megyn. Okay, my only problem, the only reason I haven't gone to TSA to get my passport stamp, customs to get my passport stamp, is she has not used that woman's name. Say her name. She's not doggone Boogie Monster. Just say her name. That's it. All right. But okay, Megyn, okay, I got my passport. I'm ready.
Not the target audience. They're trying to preserve the integrity of this case for when they get it in front of a jury, who are the only people who matter. I'm sorry, but their opinion is the only opinion that's going to matter in this case. And they will come to that opinion based on evidence that gets submitted to them that passes the rules of evidence, which are there to maintain the integrity of a case and an investigation and of the defendant's constitutional rights. That's how our system works. That's how our system works. Stop demanding that the FBI update you. That's not how it works. And it would be inappropriate for them to come out and shoot off their mouths about the latest and greatest they have, unless and until they are ready to arrest somebody else. And when they are, If they are on Transtifa, we're all ears. Then they will provide some basic modicum of evidence to support the arresting affidavit, the arrest indictment. That's how this works. By the way, criminal prosecutors have an ethical obligation not to spout off about their evidence in the case. We actually pulled this this morning, just in case you were wondering. Rule 3.8 of the ABA model rules restricts prosecutors from making extrajudicial statements that heighten public condemnation. Remember when Fani Willis did that about Donald Trump
at the church.
And his defense lawyers too, like spouting off about how race was at issue in this case?
If you're familiar, that was her initial, when she first got the case and first found out about Nathan Wade and all that, she ran to a church here in Atlanta. It's called Big Bethel AME Church. And I swear I say they do spiritual money laundering, where they try to clean up your perspective or clean up your image. And that's exactly what happened. So shout out to Megyn. Megyn, you're making me want to come back and be cool with you, Megyn. Are you going to say her name, though? That's what I need.
It was completely inappropriate. And we argued that correctly at the time. So I don't know how we've spun from that into we're allowed to spew conspiracy theories about the case because the FBI is not saying anything. That's just backwards. It's not true, okay? It's not. The rules are the same in all the cases, including this one. Now, here's what happened in court. Tyler Robinson went in there charged with aggravated murder and felony use of a firearm, as well as other charges.
All right. Okay. Ooh, Megyn was mad, y'all. Megyn was mad. Y'all, who done made Megyn upset like this? Why you I need to find that video you told me to find. All right, who done made Megyn mad like this? Y'all, I found out who it is that she doesn't want to call out, though. I did find the picture of the person that Megyn refused to call out. Let me bring it up on stage for you. All right, there we go right there. There we go right there. All right, you said Andrew Colvett. I know you liked that episode. This is actually a clip from a larger live stream. The link is down in the description, so you can go check it out. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you down there. Grace and peace.